These are the main sources for collecting the data. That is, there are two types. One is primary data, other one is secondary data. It should provide a brief introduction about the scope of gathering the information. Often the questionnaire is sent along with the covering note. So questions should be arranged sequentially and logically. Questions should be spontaneous as well as voluntary. Hello everyone, I am Harshita, lecturer, Department of Commerce, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. My dear students, today we are in the 6th session of Unit 3 of the subject Business Research Method, and the Unit 3 we were discussing was about data collection. So we have discussed few of the concepts earlier. Let us see what we have discussed. So in a previous session, I have covered this topic, that is advantages and disadvantages of primary data. So we have learned the meaning of primary as well as secondary data, and we have seen what are the advantages as well as disadvantages of primary data. And the next one was advantages and disadvantages of secondary data, and we have seen the difference between primary data as well as secondary data. So these are the main sources for collecting the data. That is, there are two types. One is primary data, other one is secondary data. So we have done with that particular topic relating to the source as well as methods of collecting the data. In today's session, we shall see few more topics relating to this particular unit. That is, the first one is survey. Now, what do I mean by survey? The essence of survey method. So, we have seen various types or various sources to collect the data. Among them, the survey is also one of them. So, the essence of survey method can be explained as questioning individuals on a topic or topics and then describing their responses. Now, if you see the interview method, here what the researcher will do, he will prepare a set of questions and it will be asked to the respondents. So, here survey means what? Questioning individuals on a particular topic or on more topics and describing their responses. So, here how they are going to respond. So, ascertaining that is called as what? Survey. So, survey method can be used in both quantitative as well as qualitative studies. Now, what do I mean by quantitative? So, I have already discussed in a previous session. Quantitative means what? Collection of data from the respondents through statistical or mathematical tools. So, they are termed as what? Quantitative data. Now, what do I mean by qualitative data? Here, what the researcher will do? Researcher will directly contact the respondent and then he will collect the information. So, they are termed as what? Qualitative studies. So, under survey, either it may be quantitative or qualitative, but the researcher will ask questions to the respondents and whatever the information which is given by them, so it will be collected by the researcher. So they are termed as what? Survey. And I have clearly told you it may be of quantitative nature or qualitative nature. Hope you know the meaning of quantitative as well as qualitative method. Now coming to the next one, questionnaires. Now what do you mean by questionnaire? So, in your interviews, so you have to collect the information. That is, the researcher will collect the information by giving the questionnaires to the respondents. Now, let us see what is this questionnaire. So, I have told in your previous session, hope you remember that questionnaire contains a set of questions which will be arranged in a order and that will be given to whom? To the respondents to answer those questions, and the respondents will answer that question and that questionnaire will be written back to the researcher. So let us see what is this questionnaire. Questionnaire is a copy of series of questions. So what does questionnaire contains? It contains a series of questions, that is a number of questions carefully created by the researcher. So it will be prepared by whom? By the researcher to collect the data. Now, what is the purpose of setting those questions by the researcher? To collect the data or information from whom? From the respondents on a particular research topic. Now, what you have to remember here? Questionnaire means what? How it will be? It will be a copy of series of questions. So, it contains a series of questions. Why it is prepared? So, created carefully by whom? by the researcher. Why it is collected or why it is prepared? To collect the data or information from whom? From the respondents on a particular research topic. So, on what basis he is going to prepare the question? On the basis of his research topic, he will prepare a set of questions which will be given to the respondents. Now, why it has been given to the respondents? To collect the answers for those questions from the respondents. So, that is termed as what? Questionnaire. It is an important means. Now, if you see your earlier sources of collecting the data, questionnaire is an important means which contains series of questions logically designed. So, it has to be designed logically. So, normally the researcher, he can't give the questions as per his wish. So, it has to be arranged serially, it has to be arranged logically and built to obtain proper information. So, the main intention is to prepare the questionnaire is to collect the information or data from the respondents, from the target respondents on a particular research topic. Hope you are clear with questionnaire. So, questionnaire means what? It is a series of questions which is prepared by the researcher and it will be given to the respondents in order to collect the information on his particular research topic. So, this is about questionnaire. Now, let us see what are the characteristics of good questionnaire, how a good questionnaire should be. A good questionnaire should have the following characteristics. Now, let us see, this is very simple, even you can understand easily. So, the first one is, it should consist of simple questions. So, he will make or he will prepare a series of questions in that particular copy, but those questions should be simple questions. That means, a respondent should be able to understand. So, how the question should be? It should be simple, at the same time it should be able to understand by the respondent. Suppose the question is very difficult and it is being communicated or it is being given to the respondent, but the respondent is not able to understand. Then what is the use of preparing questionnaire? Correct? The question should be as simple as possible so that it can be understood easily by the respondent. The questions should be easily answerable. So, it should be easily answerable by the respondent. Now, coming to the second characteristic, it should only include questions that can be answered in a yes or no. So, normally how the questionnaire will be? So, there will be a question with a number of options so that it will be easy for the respondents to answer those questions. So, it should be as simple as possible. So, the options, so here the researcher has to give few options or the options can be either yes or no questions. Next one is, it should not include ambiguous question. Question should be free from doubts, that is uncertainties, and they should ensure crystal clarity. Now, how the question should be? As I have told you, the question should be as simple as possible. At the same time, the researcher should not use any of the difficult words. So, it should be understandable to the respondent. So, he should not use any difficult words and it should be free from doubts as well as uncertainties, because the respondent should not face any difficulty while filling that questionnaire. At the same time, it should be crystal clear. Next one is, the number of questions should be limited. So, here it doesn't mean that the researcher has to give number of questions, that is more number of questions to the respondents to collect the information. So, it should be as minimum as possible. So, a minimum number of questions has to be given, because if the number of question is too large or if the number of question is more, then what happens? There may be a chances that respondents may not answer those questions. So, what he has to do? The number of questions should be limited. It should not include unnecessary as well as absurd questions. So, unnecessary question has to be avoided. Next one is, it should attract the attention of the respondents. It should include questions interesting to be answered. Now, so how the question should be? Interesting, so that the respondents will answer those questions. So, if the questions are difficult questions are given to the respondent, in that situation there may be a chances that respondents may not answer those questions. Next one is, it should provide a brief introduction about the scope of gathering the information. Often the questionnaire is sent along with the covering note. Now, what do you mean by covering note? So, whenever the researcher prepares a questionnaire, so here when it is given to the respondents has to know what is the purpose of that particular questionnaire. So, why he has to fill that questionnaire. So, everything that has to be mentioned by the researcher, because if the questionnaire is issued without knowing the reason to the respondent, then the respondent might neglect those questions. For that reason, what the researcher has to do before he gives the questionnaire, he has to explain what is the necessity of giving the questionnaire. So, what is the purpose of filling the questionnaire? So, what is the scope of that particular study? Everything has to be discussed with the respondents. So, for that he will prepare a covering note. We shall see what is this covering note in my next session. Okay. So, covering note is simple. So, it contains all the details about the research activity of the researcher, that is what is the purpose of doing this particular research activity. So, it has to be conveyed to the respondent. Next one is, it should contain simple language easily understandable by the respondents. It should avoid technical words. So, I have already told you the questionnaire should be as simple as possible. That means that here the researcher has to avoid all the technical words. He should use simple language as well as simple words while framing the questions. Next one is, it should not include longer questions. So, it should not include lengthy questions, and the number of questions also should be limited. At the same time, lengthy questions should be avoided. Sub-questions should be given. So, instead of giving one lengthy question, so you can give sub-question on that particular topic itself. So, it should not include longer questions. Sub-questions should be avoided as far as possible. So, what he has to do, instead of giving one lengthy question, they can give the sub-questions. Next one is, it should not include questions which relate to the personal aspects of informants or respondents. So, as much as possible, if it is necessary, then only the researcher has to include the personal question. So, unnecessarily, he cannot give the personal questions to the respondents, because many of the respondents may hesitate to give the personal information to the researcher. So, as much as possible, if there is no necessary, avoid all the personal questions. Next one is, the question should be rationally arranged in series. I have told you it should be very neat. The questionnaire has to be very neat and it has to be arranged properly along with the options. That means one question should be related to the next and subsequent questions. So, here, suppose a question is being asked and the next question is not relevant to that particular topic. So, this will not happen in the questionnaire. So, it should be related to a particular topic only and it should be in a series. Next one is, no prior review should be before answering the question. So, no prior review should be before answering the question. So, here before answering the question by the respondents, the researcher cannot give the review about that question. So, that is about the next characteristics. And the next one is, the questionnaire should allow reasonable opportunity to express respondents' thought as well as views. Now, in order to know the thought as well as views of the respondents, the questionnaire should be arranged in a sequential manner so that the respondent will be able to review the thought as well as views. So, these are the few characteristics of questionnaire. Now, coming to the next topic, that is precautionary measures to be taken while drafting a questionnaire. So, let us see what are the measures. So, you have seen the characteristics. Now, we shall see what are the measures that has to be taken while drafting a questionnaire. So, what are the main points that has to be remembered by the researcher while drafting a questionnaire or while preparing a questionnaire? The researcher should be careful while drafting a copy of questionnaire. So, let us see how careful he should be. So, drafting a questionnaire requires special skill, knowledge, intelligence as well as experience. So, it is not an easy task because the question has to be given to the respondents and the information has to be collected from them. So, the researcher has to think properly, he has to analyze properly, for which he requires skill, knowledge, intelligence as well as experience. The function of collecting information through the questionnaire depends on the way it is created. So, how the questionnaire, how effective the questionnaire will be, in the same way the effectiveness of answers can be predicted. In the sense, the skill of the researcher will be shown in the form of questionnaires. So, the questionnaire will be given to the respondents. So, the effective questionnaire has to be given so that effective answer can be expected from the respondents. Although there are no specific rules for drafting a questionnaire, the following rules are generally applied. So, there is no particular format, but generally this format is being applied to prepare a questionnaire. So, let us see first preparing a cover letter. So, I'll go through all the side points. Later I'll explain individually in detail. So, the first one is preparing a cover letter, that is requesting the respondents to fill and submit the questionnaire. So, I have clearly told you, so when a questionnaire is being issued to the respondents, so the respondent has to know what is the purpose of filling that questionnaire. So, that will be written in your covering letter. Next one is question should be less in number as far as possible. So, this we have learnt in a characteristics. It is question should be as small, as short as possible. At the same time, the number should also be less. Next one is question should be arranged logically. So, it should be arranged in a logical order. Next, question should be concise as well as simple. We have learned the characteristics. Next one is suspicious questions should be avoided. That is, doubtful questions should be avoided. Next one is personal questions should be avoided. So, personal questions relating to a particular topic should be avoided. Next, instructions to respondents should be part of the questionnaire. So, here a brief instruction has to be given to the respondents. So, before filling the questionnaire by the respondent, researcher has to give the brief instruction, that is how it has to be submitted back. So, what is the duration in which the questionnaire has to be returned? So, all the instructions has to be given. Next, answer to the question should be as short as possible. For example, yes or no. So, or options can be given. Next, specific information based on open-ended question should be included. So, I'll tell what is this open-ended questions later. So, open-ended questions means what? That is, we are going to discuss in this particular point. Next one is questionnaire should be attractive. So, it should be attractive so that the respondents should feel happy to fill the questionnaire. Next, questions requiring answers through numerical calculation should not be included. So, if the questionnaire includes all the numerical calculations, then the respondents will not answer the question. So, numerical questions or numerical answering of the question should be avoided. Any other precautions as the researcher deemed necessary. So, what are the precautions that has to be taken by the respondents while filling the questionnaire? So, that also has to be mentioned here. Now, we shall discuss individual points now. So, the first one is preparing cover letter. Now, what do you mean by that? So, preparing cover letter. So, I have told you before a researcher gives the questionnaire to the respondents, so he has to write a cover letter. Let us see what are included in the cover letter. So, the investigator who is conducting the research introduces himself to the respondent through a request letter. Now, who is the investigator? Investigator will be the researcher. So, researcher, what the researcher will do? Before he gives the questionnaire to the respondents, he has to introduce himself. That is, what is the name, what the activity is going to do, on what topic he is going to conduct the research activity, everything he has to mention. So, the investigator who is conducting the research introduces himself to the respondent through a request letter. So, he will prepare a request letter where he will introduce himself to the respondent. So, this letter is called as what? Cover letter. So, this letter where he introduced himself to the respondent is called as what? Cover letter. The letter highlights the objectives and scope of research. Now, what the letter will contain? It contains the objective. So what is the main objective of conducting that research activity as well as the scope of research. The cover letter includes the following appeals. So let us see what are the items that are included in the cover letter. So the first one is the objective of survey or research and how it will help the respondent. Now, what is the main objective of doing that particular survey? So why he has to collect the information? So that will be included in your first point. Next one is self-addressed and sufficiently stamped envelope to enable the respondent to return and fill the questionnaire to the researcher. An envelope will be placed where it will be given to the respondent. So after filling the questionnaire, so the respondent has to put that questionnaire in the envelope and return back to the researcher. Next one is a letter containing a statement assuring that the answers given by the respondents are kept secret. Now here the researcher has to give an assurance to the respondents that whatever the information which is collected by the respondent, so it will not be revealed anywhere, it will be kept secret. Because normally the respondent doesn't like the information, like their personal information to be revealed in public. In that situation, here the researcher has to give an assurance to the respondent telling that all the information which is collected by him, it will be kept secret. Next one is motivation to fill out and return the questionnaire as quickly as possible. Now, the main intention of researcher is to give the questionnaire to the respondent to collect the information. Suppose if the respondents have taken the questionnaire and not returned it back, then what happens? It is a loss for the researcher because he may lose some information from that particular respondent. So here in the cover letter itself, a motivation to fill out. So a motivation will be given to fill all the questions in the questionnaire and return back to the researcher. That is, he tells what is the requirement of the information for him from the respondent. Next one is a statement that a copy of the research will be provided if the respondent wish to get. That is a statement of copy of his research activity. So he will give a copy of research activity what he has done if the respondent need that. So if the respondent need that copy, the researcher has to give the copy to the respondent. So this is about preparing the cover letter. So what are included in that? That is introduction about the researcher, then what is the purpose of doing that research activity, then that is objective of survey. Next, an envelope will be given so that the respondent will fill that questionnaire and put that questionnaire in the envelope and return it back. Next, a letter containing statement of assurance, that is whatever the information which is given by the respondent will be kept secret. Next one is motivation to fill out the questionnaire. So a motivation will be given to the respondent to fill the questionnaire and return it back. Next, a statement of copy if the respondent wish to take from the researcher. So a statement of copy of the research activity should be given by the researcher to the respondent. Next, the second one is number of questions should be small. So this is also one of the precautionary measures. So the number of questions should be small. Here he can't include more number of questions in that, or it may lead to boredom of the respondent. A questionnaire should contain only such number of questions that are sufficient to accomplish the objective of research. So how much information he wants, only for that information he has to prepare the questions. Other than that, that is unnecessary question has to be avoided. 15 to 25 questions are considered to be desirable. So how many questions researcher has to give? That is 15 to 25 questions. If the number of question is too high, then what happens? The respondents will be bored and they may not answer properly. So short or minimum number of question has to be given here. Sometimes they may give absurd, that is vague answers if the number of question is more in number. So if the respondent feel bored, then as per their wish they are going to answer the question. That is unnecessary answers will also be given by the respondent if the question is or the number of question is very high. Next one is questions must be arranged logically. So here under this, the third point is that the question has to be arranged logically. So question should be arranged sequentially and logically. Question should be spontaneous as well as voluntary. Now what happens here? The question should be arranged in a logical manner. So it has to be arranged logically, that is in a particular series. So stacked or arranged question should be related to each other. So for example, if they are going to ask a question on the name of the respondent, and after that if they ask something else not relating to that, then it will be difficult for the respondent to answer. So it should be in a sequence order where each and every question should be interrelated to each other. For example, when you ask, do you owe a two-wheeler? If the respondent say yes, so if the respondent's answer is yes, then the researcher should continue to ask to which company it belonged to. So like that, the question has to be interrelated to each other. So if the respondent is in employment, then the researcher should ask what is the salary per month. These are the logical as well as sequential arranged question. For the same example, so if the question was, do you owe a two-wheeler? If the respondents tell yes, then relating question should be asked. Other than that, what is your father's name? Like that, the irrespective question should not be asked. So it should be sequentially as well as logically arranged. Next one is, question should be brief and simple. So this we have learnt in our characteristic. As much as possible, the question has to be as simple as possible. So question should be simple and understandable. So the questions what they are going to include in the questionnaire should be simple and understandable. Technical terms, that is difficult terms should be avoided as much as possible. That is, question should not be confusing. So yeah, it should not confuse the respondent. So simple terms has to be used, and the researcher has to make sure that he will prepare the questionnaire as simple as possible. Questions that arouse confusions should be solved with a separate explanation or note. So questions that will have confusion in the minds of respondents, so it should be solved with a separate note. So a note has to be written here. So this is about question should be brief and simple. Next one is ambiguous question should be avoided. So let us see what is this ambiguous question. Means a question where different people interrupt the same question in a different manner. So it means what? A same question which can be interpreted different from one person to another. So this interpretation by different meaning, so that should be avoided here. So the question means a question where different people interpret the same question in a different manner. So the interpretation has to be made in the same manner. So for example, if the researcher have prepared a question but it is understood by the respondent in some other manner, then the answer given by the respondent will be different. So the question should be in the same way how it has been understood by the researcher. So it should be simple. So they are making the question so simple that it will not be misunderstood by the respondent and the wrong answer will be given by the respondent. Next, such questions should be avoided. That is, unnecessary or confusing questions has to be avoided. Next one is avoid personal questions. So this I have told you, there are certain respondents who are not in a position to give the personal information to the researcher. So many of the respondents do that. They doesn't want to reveal their personal information. In such cases, unless it is not necessary, no need to ask any of the personal questions. So personal question about the respondent should be strictly avoided in the questionnaire. So it has to be strictly avoided. For example, a questionnaire should not contain questions regarding the personal income. So normally certain respondent will not reveal their personal income, income tax, asset owned, loans raised, etc. If any reply is required on personal matters, respondent should be separately contacted over phone. So if they want the personal matter, then they can contact through telephone. Other than that, in the questionnaire, no personal questions has to be asked. Next one is include instructions to informants. So I have told you while preparing a questionnaire, so certain instruction has to be given to the respondents also. The questionnaire should give appropriate instructions to the respondents. So let us see what are the instructions that has to be given here. For example, in how many days questionnaire should be returned back. So if the researcher is undertaking a research activity for 2 years, then before, what is the duration of questionnaire to be returned back? So after 2 years, if the respondents return that questionnaire, then what is the use of that? So a clear instruction has to be given to the respondents, that is how it has to be filled. So what is the duration or what is the last date to return the questionnaire back? Everything that has to be discussed here. So for example, in how many days questionnaire should be returned to the researcher and to which address should be sent. So through envelope, it has to be returned back. So to which address to send? If there is a need to specify a measure or weight to any question, the researcher must clarify the measurement method such as kilogram, pound, meter, etc. Or he can give few more instructions like, so these are the few important questions where you have to compulsorily answer, because without which the research work cannot undertaken. Like that, few instruction has to be given by the researcher to the respondent. Next one is yes or no questions. So here I have told you the question should be as simple as possible. It should not be in a theory format. So here if it is not necessary, there is no need for the researcher to give a question in a theory format where they have to write page together. So as simple as possible the questions should be. So as far as possible, the answer should be yes or no. So most of the time in the questionnaire, they will give yes or no question or questions with option where the respondent have to tick the answer. If the research experts elaborate explanation, the respondent may not be able to answer. So if the researcher asks to elaborate the answer, then in certain situation, respondents, not all, few of the respondents may not be able to answer that. So the questionnaire should be as simple as possible, or he may neglect to write his opinion, or he may totally skip the questionnaire. So he may totally neglect the questionnaire if a researcher asks to elaborate the answer. So elaborate in 2 to 3 sentences. Then in that situation, questionnaire may be neglected by the respondent. Therefore, the question should be brief enough to expect only short answers like yes or no questions. Next one is specific information question as well as open-ended question. Now, what do you mean by specific information question? So, you have seen about yes or no question where the options will be given either yes or no, or few options will be given. Now, here specific information question and open-ended question. So, specific answer can be expected only when the questions are designed so. So, for a particular question, if the researcher wants a specific answer from the respondent, then he can then he can write a question, or then he can add a question in the questionnaire relating to specific answer. For example, do you use Lux soap? So, why do you use Colgate toothpaste? So, this is the reason. So, this is a specific reason where it has to be included in the questionnaire. So, these questions expect specific answer because not all of them will use the soap, that is Lux soap. In the same way, not all of them will use the Colgate toothpaste. In that situation, why they will use? So, they have to write the answer for that. And they are open-ended questions. Now, what do you mean by open-ended questions? Close-ended means what? You will have only limited options to answer. Whereas in open-ended, as much as you can elaborate the answers. That is in the theory format, you can elaborate the answers. In such cases, the respondents has liberty to answer according to their wish. In such cases, that is under open-ended question, there is no particular limit for the respondent to answer. They can answer as per their wish. Their wish as well as their opinion can be written in the form of questionnaire or written in the form of answers in the questionnaire. Next one is questionnaire should be attractive. So the main thing is that the questionnaire, so in order to attract the respondent, the first thing is that the questionnaire has to be attractive. So the next point is that questionnaire should be attractive. So the main thing in order to attract the respondent is a questionnaire, that is a format of questionnaire, it should be attractive. So questionnaire should be as attractive as possible. So paper used for printing. So whatever the paper which is been used for printing the questionnaire, it should be a quality paper. The questionnaire should be of good quality. The questionnaire should provide enough space between the questions for proper answering. So there should be a proper space, as well as the editing as well as formatting of the questionnaire has to be done properly, so that it can be attractively presented to the respondent, so that they might feel happy to answer all the questions. Next one is questions requiring calculations should be avoided. So I have already told you the question should be simple. At the same time, you might include yes or no questions, or if you want any specific answer, or you can ask the respondent to elaborate the answer. Other than that, the questions requiring calculations has to be avoided. Questions requiring numerical answers should be avoided as far as possible. So, numerical answers. So, the answers that has to be given in the form of calculations. So, such type of questions has to be avoided. So, for example, sales forecasting, demand forecasting, calculation of ratios, proportions, etc. should be avoided. So, such type of questions may not be interested for the respondent to answer. In that situation, calculation of questions, that is calculation questions should be avoided. Next one is other precautions. Let us see what are the other precautions that has to be taken here. Other precautions to be taken while preparing the questionnaire includes the following. Let us see. Questionnaire with or questions with multiple answers should be given. So this I have already told you, they can give yes or no questions. Suppose a question is been given. Now they can give in the form of option, that is A, B, C and D. So like that, the question has to be given in the form of options, that is called as what? Close-ended question, where the respondents will have only limited option to answer. So other than this A, B, C, D, they can't answer other thing. So if they want to answer, then specific questions will be asked so that they can elaborate the answer. So as much as possible, you have to give the multiple answer question. Next one is offensive or objectable question should be avoided. So if there is any offensive or objection question, so that type of question has to be avoided. So it might create something else in the minds of respondent. So for that, this offensive or objection question has to be avoided. Next, repetition of questions should be avoided. Of course, we can't repeat the questions again and again. It shows the incapability of the researcher. So, repetition of questions should be avoided. Questions that examine the personal integrity, belief, honesty should be avoided. So, this is relating to their personal things, that is personal integrity, their religion, their belief, their language. So, these things they have to avoid. If any picture or chart is printed, it should be clearly printed. So, I have told you the presentation of your questionnaire is very important. So, if you are going to print any of the pictures or any other chart, it has to be clearly printed. Questionnaire should be free from grammatical or spelling errors. So, it should be free from grammatical or spelling errors. If the questionnaire is long, important questions should not be included at the end of the questionnaire. Now, suppose if you are having 25 to 30 questions and you are putting all the important question at the end, so what happens? So I have told you, you have to minimize the number of questions as far as possible. So what you are going to do, you will take all the important questions first if your number of questions is too large. So if it is 30 to 40 questions, so what you have to do, you have to take all the important questions first, then leave other questions. Because if you keep all the important questions at the end, there may be a chances that respondents might have answered only few questions in the beginning. They have left out last questions. So, it will be difficult to collect the information from them in that situation. So, these are all the precautionary measures that has to be taken by the researcher while preparing a questionnaire. It is very simple and it is very easily understandable also. So, in my next session, I am going to discuss the next topic, that is designing the questionnaire or steps in drafting the questionnaire. Both the topics are same. So, it can be asked as designing the questionnaire or steps in drafting the questionnaire. So, what are the various steps which are included in preparing a questionnaire? So, my dear students, hope you have understood today's session. See you all in my next session with a new topic. Till then, take care. Thank you.